Good evening. Welcome to another show of Aging with Attitude. Tonight, my name is Phil Koch, the host, and tonight our guest will be Kara Newport, the Executive Director of the Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden. And welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I tell you, I'm very excited to hear about the garden and more about it. Why don't you start with telling us more about the gardens themselves and the history of the gardens, if you could, Kara.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, Daniel Stowe was part of the textile industry in Gaston County, and he had this great idea in the late 80s that he really wanted to give back to the community in the way of a botanical garden. Actually, he started with the idea of having a conservatory, a glass house, but then he and Bill Steele, who was his advisor at the time, got together and talked about what the options were. They did a lot of international research. They brought on a planning company to do a master plan and started really talking about a full-scale botanical garden. So the ground broke and our main building opened in 1999. So we have a visitor pavilion, a large Italianate, pretty grand visitor pavilion, and then we have about 10 acres of cultivated property that opened in 1999. In 2003, they added the West and White Gardens, which is where all the weddings happen. And then in 2009, we opened the Orchid Conservatory. So that was our last addition in 2009. We've also added some trails, and so you can get out into the natural areas. So all in all, when you come to visit, you can access about 110 acres of the almost 400 acres that Dan Stowe donated. So it's a big property, yeah.
Wow. Now tell me, what are the hours and the days that they operate?
Okay, we're open 7 days a week, 9 to 5 every day. We are closed for some of the holidays. We're closed for New Year's Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day itself. We're actually open Christmas Eve because we have a great holiday program. Wow. And we have our services available every day that we're open. We do alternate our hours a little bit for some of our special events, so we also have some evening hours like during the holidays, but we're open all the time, which is really great because a lot of our guests that come out are members. They're part of our member program, so they like to come and walk and see the garden at different times. So they come quite often, actually.
Tell us about the member program.
The membership program, we have starting individual memberships at $45 and then household memberships at $75, and it gives you all access to the garden year-round, and then you get discounts in our store and discounts at other local garden centers, and so it's really actually a great deal. You can pay for a membership in just a few visits. You can bring guests at a discounted rate when you come, and one of the best things about being a public garden is that public gardens across the country are all very related, and we work together collaboratively. So with our membership, you can actually get into several hundred botanical gardens across the country. So there's a whole list of reciprocal gardens that you can go to. So it's a really nice benefit, particularly for people who travel, who can go to some of the other great gardens in the country.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Are there others within the state of North and South Carolina?
Yeah, there are quite a few gardens in our area. There's Airlie Gardens out in Wilmington, and there are several gardens in Chapel Hill and the Raleigh-Durham area. So, and then of course a university garden up in Asheville. The North Carolina Arboretum is in Asheville.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a good deal.
So tell me about the different types of flowers. How many different species do you have?
Oh gosh, many. Right now in our garden, we are really focused on perennials, and that's not necessarily our long-term intent because we do have a master plan. But that was what was built first. What was constructed first was perennial gardens, of course. So we have a lot of perennials in that area, and then of course when we added the Orchid Conservatory, we added a growing center space to house the orchids in the off season. So we have a collection of about 6,000 orchids.
6,000?
We have a lot of orchids, yeah. Some of them are used for what we call just display purposes. If you've come during the holidays, we have an orchid tree that has over 300 live flowering orchids on it.
Wow.
And so we might have a lot of Phalaenopsis, so the white moth type orchids is what they're called, and so we might have duplicates of the same orchid so that we can put them in mass and have display opportunity for them, but we have to have a lot of them for that, and then we have to get them to flower all at the same time. So that's the trick of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard of it just on a personal note, the spider lilies.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that?
We actually have some of the spider lilies,
really?
not in the kind of numbers that flower on the Catawba River, but
Right.
they are spectacular. They're really beautiful. But yeah, we have lots of interesting things like that. One of my other favorites is the pineapple lily. So it looks like it's in the form of a cone like a pineapple. So
Wow.
it's kind of interesting. So we've got the gamut there, really, representing traditional, what I would call traditional Southern horticulture and kind of new Southern horticulture. You get the things that you might find in Grandma's garden or in our cottage garden. So if you come through, the first garden you see is the Four Seasons garden, and then the next garden is the cottage garden. And the cottage garden has hydrangeas and viburnums and the things that you might see climbing roses at Grandma's house. An old Southern garden might have these sorts of things. But then the next garden you come into is our canal garden, where we've featured what used to be marginal tropicals, and they're now pretty much seasonal tropicals. We can grow palms and bananas and ginger lilies and all kinds of things that have historically been considered tropical, but with the changing in our climate, we're seeing that we can grow more and more from the subtropical environment, and less from the mountains. We don't grow conifers as well, and willows. It's a little too hot for willows now. So we're adapting to keep up with some of these changes that happen.
Yeah, you see more and more vineyards, for example, creeping into the Carolinas, and very successful vineyards.
Right.
Is that because of some of the climate changes?
Yeah, it is. And also people figuring out what cultivars really work well here.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination of things. Hops is another thing that you're able to grow here now. Then you use hops to brew beer. So, you can grow a lot of different things here that people didn't used to associate with our climate. But we're a great range. The Piedmont, which is kind of the central swath of the Carolinas, all the way up to Delaware is part of the Piedmont, and that Piedmont area, you do get a lot of range in it. You can grow some of the coastal grasses and those sorts of plants, some of the plants that come from the mountains, and then we have our own range as well. So it's pretty diverse to begin with, but we're kind of stretching that range more south than what we can grow right now. So it's interesting, and we're a little drier like the West. So yeah.
So how is your background in horticulture?
I was a undergraduate. I was a botanist, and then I have a graduate degree in public horticulture management.
Wow.
And so I wanted to work in a public garden. So this was a great opportunity. I had spent some time working in science museums, and I worked at a zoo. So I have a bit of a mixed background, but it all came together working in a public garden. So that's really exciting.
Are there any? You say it's 400 acres?
It is, yeah.
And out of that, what percent, how many acres are?
About 120 are open now to the public, yeah. And when Dan Stowe had the original vision, he had envisioned a 50-year master plan. So the planning company that he worked with, led by Jeff Rausch, the designer, designed the entire 400 acres. So there's a plan for all of it to happen. And some of that's going to shift around as we learn more about what people want in the audience, but the pieces and parts are all there. So in the plan was a glass house, a conservatory, so we opened the orchid conservatory. In the plan was the white garden, so we built the white garden. So we're really kind of following his original vision, which is very important as our founder and as the original investor in this. We're following that vision, but we're also being responsive to our community. So the plan plan now, so in the 50-year master plan, we're about a quarter of the way developed with what was in the development piece of the plan. So there's a lot more to come. In its completion, it will be a huge garden. All of the acreage will be covered. You'll be able to access different areas, different types of gardens. But one of the changes that we have seen lately is that more and more people are coming with families with young children. And by family, I mean extended family. All aunts might bring nieces and nephews, grandparents may bring the grandkids, or mom and dad may come. So it's, we're seeing this change in the kids coming out more. It used to be really a very 55 plus focused audience. And so when looking at the master plan, on the master plan was a children's garden. And so we've decided that that's going to be our next project, and we're calling it Lost Hollow. We're very excited about this next project coming up, and we started raising money for it. We have a lead donor, Duke Kimbrell, one of our board members, has given us a leadership gift, and we have a challenge grant right now that we're raising money towards. So the total project will be $4 million. We hope to break ground this fall, but the theme of the garden is very different, very unusual, because it's not just, I think when people think of a children's garden, they think of a playground, and that's not what it's like at all. It's going to be a garden, a beautiful, well thought out, well designed display garden. We're actually going to have probably a spring focus in our plant selection, so that we right now have a lot in flower, a lot going on with it. And it's going to be designed so that anybody can come and enjoy it. It's not just for children. So our theme, based a little bit on Dan Stowe's history himself, he was quite a collector of things. So he would go over to Europe and bring back things like an old phone booth. Or gates from a monastery, and so he has unusual things that were integrated into his home or even in storage that we're kind of pulling out, and we pulled all these things out and said, how can we use these in a garden? And what we realized is that it's sort of this old European world meets the New South feel to it, so bringing those two things together, and what we've ended up with is a deconstructed castle is what we're calling it. So the pieces and parts you might find in a castle, you're going to find scattered throughout this garden, integrated into the garden. So they'll be inspirational for kids. That's one of the things that was important to us. So we want people to come to feel like they've gone somewhere else, some magical land, which is why we called it Lost Hollow. Things that have been lost and found in this hollow.
Great name. I like that name.
And it's literally in a hollow. It's a beautiful landform. So we're going to keep as much of the natural terrain as we can. And right now our garden's very flat and level, and this will be undulating and rolling. It's 3.5 acres in total, so it's a pretty big area for a formal garden. And it'll have a castle keep, which is the tower. That's going to be one of the central aspects. It'll have a pond, an amphitheater, and then the amphitheater, this is a great example of multi-use space, because the amphitheater, we imagine that there might be a bride or two that would like to get married in Lost Hollow, and we can do musical performances there. So it's not just about children, it's about everybody enjoying the space together. So it'll be a place where you can, sit on a bench and watch the kids and grandkids, or...
Is there picnic areas now where people can...
There are, and picnicking's huge, that's one of the things. We just had a big weekend, and, it's a beautiful time of the year, and you could find people picnicking at the ponds and on the Great Lawn and the Four Seasons, and we welcome picnic baskets all the time,
Wow.
So that'll be an aspect of it as well,
Well, there's a lot of animal lovers out there. Are they allowed to bring pets in?
No, and that's one of the things that sets us apart a little bit from a park, and we talk to people a lot about this, and so you can bring your picnic, but it's more of a controlled experience, I would say, because if you're looking for sports or a place to take your dogs or hiking, that's not necessarily what we're about.
Right.
But another great new thing that's happening at the garden is that we're partnering with the Carolina Thread Trail. And so we're going to be a destination on the Carolina Thread Trail. And in fact, they're building a section of the trail that will go along Lake Wylie, the waterfront. That is part of the garden's edge. So the garden's edge and then the thread trail and then Lake Wylie will be all connected. And, you know, the trail system allows dogs and, you know, allows for biking and other things that you can't do in the garden. So it'll be a great partner for us so that you can do some of those outdoor things that people like to do and have, you know, this very elegant garden experience as well. So it can be, you know, a combined experience. It'll be a great full day if you want to do it all.
Wow, it sounds like it. It's a big place. Tell me more about you say you get receptions now, like wedding receptions?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more about
we have. It's our biggest revenue stream. The garden is wholly funded by our admissions, contributions, and membership, and then wedding rental events are another aspect of how we fund what we're able to do. But it's also one of the top bridal venues in the region.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, there are only 52 Saturdays in a year, so there's a lot of competition for them, and everyone wants that beautiful Saturday in May. We book quite a few months out and sometimes years for the popular dates. Yeah, and we have about 100 events a year: weddings, birthday parties, social events, corporate events, but mostly weddings. Yeah.
So if somebody wanted a book, would they call up the center, or could they do it online, or
they would give us a call. Yeah, we have a dedicated staff that help to handle that, and we've done big anniversary parties. You know, all kinds of things can happen there, and we actually are set up very well so that we can do these things during the day. We have a space in our main building that connects to a garden area, so you can rent that during the day, and the guests sort of go through another direction. So it's a good integrated space that you can use in different ways.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to forget to mention, if you're coming out for the day, another great experience is our garden store. We have a garden store where we have, you know, the typical things that you might find in any museum store, but we work with a lot of local craftsmen and local artists, and so you can get a lot of really interesting, unique things there that are local. And then, of course, we have a plant sale area too. So we sell both our own plants that we've grown, and we partner with other local growers to sell interesting plants. We like to focus on things you can't find at Home Depot or Lowe's. So
give us some examples of some of those types of plants.
The interesting plants, well, I'll tell you one of the favorites is the giant snowball viburnum that is flowering in the spring. The flowers are, you know, this big around, and they're not easy to find all the time. So when people come, they see them, and then they really want that. So we try to do that as well, and we try to, you know, showcase things that are flowering in the garden that people might see. Another one in the fall is the muley grass, Muhlenbergia, which is related to the sweetgrass that they make the baskets out of.
Right.
But this one has pink plumes on it, and so it gets a lot of attention in the fall, and everyone wants their own. So we have those available as well.
Now, they always look great in the garden. But if Joe Blow, like me, was to bring that home, do you have to be a horticulturist?
Not always, not always, no. And there's lots of information out, and we actually offer some classes and programs so that if you wanted to learn more, you could come out and come to some of our classes and programs. We do horticulture highlight walks where we'll talk about different aspects of plants. Sometimes we'll having a plant propagation class coming up, and we do a lot of photography classes. That's our biggest class group is our photography classes, but people like to come out and learn how to do it and ask us questions, so we want to give them that opportunity. But you know, the beauty of being a gardener, and any gardener out there is going to tell you that it's all about trial and error. You know, what grows well over here may not grow well over here, and so you have to move things around, and you have to be willing to try. And that's the key to lots of things, particularly those orchids. Those orchids are really tough sometimes, so you got to give them a different chance, I guess.
So let me ask you something. I have a friend who owns a restaurant. When he goes and visits other restaurants to eat, and he gives them ideas for his own restaurant. Do you do that? Would you go to the another garden.
I do, yeah. And you know what's great about garden people who like to go to gardens like to go to gardens, and they go to gardens all over the country. So that's why our membership program is such a good thing. But I personally love gardens. So every time I go on vacation, I have to go see what botanical garden is nearby and go visit it. Yeah. But also, I'm on the American Public Gardens Association National Board, which is a great thing, and it gives me a wonderful opportunity to go to their meetings, which they have at different gardens all over the country. And in fact, I'll be going to the Desert Botanic Garden soon, which you may think there's not a lot we can learn from them, but from a programmatic perception, perspective, we can learn that. From an event perspective, we can learn a lot from them. Signage, there's a lot we have to learn from each other. Yeah. So, and the garden world is great in sharing. We would love to have more people come to our garden from other gardens all the time. So it's a very communal group of people, and that's nice to work with.
Are there any, just out of curiosity, 400 acres is a decent amount, any animals that roam the gardens?
Yeah, we get the gamut. Unfortunately, we have way too many deer, so they like to munch on our things. They ate a lot of our pansies this past winter, but we also, we see raccoons. We see a lot of birds of prey, which is interesting. For a while, we had a mating pair of bald eagles, so they were around there. We're on Lake Wylie, so there's some osprey nesting sites. Wow. We have a very active bluebird program, so there's lots of birding opportunities there. And then, the traditional nighttime visitors like the raccoons come out, so we see some of them too. More their handiwork, but yeah. We're out in the country, so you get to see all kinds of wildlife and interact with it as well.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Do you what other types of classes do you offer? Like I said, the photography classes are really our big one, and that's we've offered interesting things like Tai Chi or yoga in the garden. We have the birding walks, which are very popular. People really love to go out and see what kind of birds that we have. We just saw an indigo bunting the other day, which is a really neat bird to see because they're just such bright, vibrant, purpley blue, and so you see all of those. Probably not all on the same walk, but that's what we offer. We offer them once a month so that you can see those changing things. And then the photography classes we offer in a series of from basic to advanced. So if you've gotten a new camera and want to come figure that out, we have great instructors that we work with on that. And then of course we offer traditional horticulture classes, and that depends on the season. During winter, we offer classes on orchids and growing your own orchids, and we have an orchid workshop. So that range it changes from season to season. And of course during the holidays, which I haven't mentioned, we have a great Holidays at the Garden program. We change the whole garden. We transform it from regular winter trees to beautifully lit trees, and it's really spectacular. Wow. We have about 600,000 lights, but the most important thing about our light display, different than some of the other ones that you might see, is we try to do everything about the plants. Either highlight the plants or wrap the plants or have lights that look like plants. So we are, trying to showcase an entirely different display in the winter, and it's not just the display. It's also about the experience that you get when you come out. So you have, we have a coffee shop, we have a little coffee bar that you can go to. We have trains set up. Trains?
In the conservatory, yeah. We have two different size trains for those model train folks out there. We have the garden scale and the smaller ones, about that big. But they're really popular. We have Santa come out. We have musical performances. So it's not just about experiencing the garden in the lights and during the holidays, but it's about the whole holiday experience. And And we offer wreath classes, which is how we got there. You know, we have wreath making and decor that happens. But one of the things I love the most about the holidays, that's the time when we see the gamut of family. You know, we'll get a family group that comes out with 20 people, all different ages, you know, from the baby in the stroller to great grandma, and it's just great to see all the family coming out together to experience the garden. And inevitably people say, oh, this is fantastic, you know, we want to come back in the spring, we want to come back in the fall, or what's your next class coming up? So it's a great introduction to the garden, and it works for even those people who think they don't love gardens. So
so if somebody wanted to do a class, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, you mean which class should they take, or how do they do it?
To look at the classes and how to register.
How to register. All of our classes and programs, everything's listed online. So the place to get more information about the garden always is our website. So it's www.dsbg, as in Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden, .org. We're a .org because we're a nonprofit. So so that's a really great way to find out the information. Or you can always just call or stop by. If you become a member, you'll get newsletters, and all of our classes are listed in the newsletter. So you should become a member, and you'll get the newsletter.
I've got 3 kids of my own, and we'll be going to the garden, no doubt, in the future. What's the big surges? I mean, what days of the year or times of the year are more popular than others?
Our biggest weekend is Mother's Day.
Yeah.
All mothers get in free Mother's Day, so it's our biggest weekend of the year. And then the other big time, spring is our biggest season, kind of seconded by holidays. So you know, holidays at the garden and spring kind of go back and forth, and then you know, fall's pretty busy too. A lot of people think that winter is our slowest time, but actually February, March is pretty good because spring comes early in the south, and also because we have an orchid show then. You know, that's when we showcase our orchids. So a lot of people come to see the orchids in the winter. It's a good escape. You feel like you've gone to some tropical island if you come out on a Saturday to the conservatory. But August is probably the time when it's the hottest and not as much fun. But that is the time of one of my favorite programs, which is our hummingbird banding. We've been working with a scientist for 8 years, and she's been banding hummingbirds and tracking their migration patterns. So it's been, you know, that's a really great program. So really, there's no bad time to come. So you should come out.
How do you catch a hummingbird? That must be a trick.
Yeah, it is. They're pretty quick. You'll have to come see.
Any frost issues? I mean, how do you deal with all the plants when there's a frost warning out? Yeah,
well, you know, we've been pretty lucky with that, and we try not to put our annuals out too soon. You know, that's the trick. You got to wait until that last frost before you change into your seasonal display for the summer. But you know, we've been pretty lucky.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Well, I tell you, Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden, which is located again?
It's in Gaston County, just south of Belmont, North Carolina, and right off of New Hope Road. We're easy to find.
Which is right off of I-85.
That's right. That's right. It's a straight shot. Yeah.
Well, we're very fortunate to have had Kara Newport, Executive Director, here to join us at the show. I tell you one thing, you've got me intrigued, and I'm going to be coming to the Botanical Gardens with my family in the near future, that's for sure. Beautiful weather for it right now. I imagine that this spring, summer, and fall will be a wonderful time at the garden.
It will be. It will be. Come on out.
Well, great. Thank you very much.